The Rachel Zegler saga continues. A former Disney designer who's also the son of the director of the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had some very blunt words for Rachel Zegler and the current Walt Disney Company, saying that Walt Disney and his father would very much disagree with Rachel Zegler's vision for Snow White. So David Hand, who is the Disney designer, his dad also happened to be David Hand as well, and was the director of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, recently spoke with The Telegraph after Rachel Zegler's comments about the new vision for Snow White she pontificated about it at the D23 Expo last September. If you don't know what she said, you are just kind of getting caught up on this controversy. She told Extra TV the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her, so she's calling the prince a stalker. Weird. So we didn't do that this time. When asked if the prince would even be in the film, Zegler answered, "We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story, just because we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Burnap, great dude, so we might not even get a prince in this movie." She continued saying, "It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby." She then revealed what the film is really about. She said it's an inner journey that she goes on to find her true self, and she meets a lot of people along the way that make the journey really incredible. She made similar comments to Variety when asked why she described the movie as having a modern edge. She said, "I just mean it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White." Gal Gadot interjected, saying she's not going to be saved by the prince. Zegler then affirmed she's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in. Then she told Entertainment Weekly that they are going to be redefining what the term fair means in the movie. It's no longer going to be about beauty. It's going to be about justice. This is what she said. The reality is that the cartoon was made 85 years ago. She keeps pointing out that the cartoon was made in 1937, like that's somehow a knock against it. It's not. And therefore, it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power and what a woman is fit for in the world. And so when we came to reimagining the actual role of Snow White, it became about the fairest of them all, meaning who is the most just and who can become a fantastic leader. And the reality is, Snow White has to learn a lot of lessons about coming into her own power before she can come into power over a kingdom. And then Gadot added, also the fact that she's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's the proactive one, and she's the one who set the terms, is what makes it so relevant to where we are today. So Hand reacted to these comments in the Telegraph. He said, "I mean, it's a whole different concept, and I just totally disagree with it. And I know my dad and Walt would also very much disagree with it. I think it's pathetic that people feel that way. These are art forms in the world of film today." He then rebuked her assertion that the animated film's ideas were dated, saying that the original animated movie was made, quote, "with good taste when it was written, and I disagree that this whole new concept, but I know Disney's getting into that mode." Not only did Hand have pointed comments about Zegler and the Walt Disney Company's vision for Snow White, but he also criticized the company's embrace of wokeness. He said, "I'm afraid of what they're going to do with the early films. Their thoughts are just so radical now." Indeed, they are. They changed the stories. They changed the thought processes of the characters. They just aren't the original stories anymore. That's very abundantly clear that they're completely changing the entire story of Snow White based on what I just recounted from Rachel Zegler. It doesn't sound anything like the original animated show, or the animated movie. So he's right on point on that. And then he goes on and says, "They're making up new woke things, and I'm just not into any of that." Preach. Neither am I. I think most of America isn't either. He then noted, "I find it quite frankly a bit insulting that they may have that they may have done with some of these classic films." I think he meant to say what they may have done. There might have been a typo on the Telegraph's part. Who knows? "There's no respect for what Disney did and what my dad did. I think Walt and he would be turning in their graves." Turning in their graves, he says that both his dad and Walt Disney would be turning in their graves to what the company is doing to the films the films they created in the past. So he didn't just criticize Zegler and Disney, but did offer them some advice on what they should be doing. Instead, he said they shouldn't be taking a classic and rewriting it in their own image. Pick on something else, create new characters if you're going to do this, but don't destroy or try to destroy something that is a classic and is a beautiful piece. So he's actually saying that they're trying to destroy Snow White, and they are destroying Snow White. And I think that's exactly what it is. They're calling it Snow White, but it is anything but Snow White. There's no prince. It's not about vanity. The term fair has been changed. It's about Snow White's like inner journey to find herself. It's not Snow White. It's not the story of Snow White. They're actually destroying the story of Snow White, and they're just putting a label on it, trying to tell you that it's called Snow White, and they're going to dress Rachel Zegler up as in the costume that Snow White wore. But seemingly nothing else is Snow White about the movie. The Telegraph also noted that Hand said original Snow White actress Adriana Caselotti would be terrified of how Zegler is describing the character, and that Caselotti was very proud of her role in Snow White. So lovely, she lived that role for all of her life. I think that's specifically referring to kind of Zegler's comments up here, where I think it's right here, we're talking about fair here, the ideas of women being in roles of power and what a woman is fit for in the world. I think that's what she's talking about when she's saying that the ideas of the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had ideas when it was extremely dated when it came to the ideas of women. I think that's exactly what he's referring to there. But that is what David Hand had to say. He wasn't pulling any punches, and I don't think a lot of other people either. I mean, Rachel Zegler and the Walt Disney Company and their vision for this Snow White film is just completely repulsive. It's turned so many people off, and it's one of the reasons why people are turning off Hollywood, because they constantly do this with property after property after property, and Snow White is just the biggest. I think it's the biggest, and obviously the most latest as well. But it won't be the last. It will not be the last.
Subscribe for more.